Last week, the UK editor of Roald Dahl's classics drew the ire of the British Prime Minister and also of acclaimed authors like Salman Rushdie when it was reported by the Daily Telegraph that in such classics as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach, language related to weight, mental health, violence, gender, and race has been cut and rewritten. Well, the French publishers of Roald Dahl's classics say that this does not concern them. The rewrite only concerns Britain. Gallimard says we have never changed Roald Dahl's writings before, and we have no plans to do so today. For more, let's go to Newcastle. Karen Sands O'Connor is professor of children's literature at Newcastle University. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this is a story that resonated on this side of the channel. There's been big following since the 1960s for James et la Grosse Pêche and Charlie et la Chocolaterie. So just tell us, first off, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about this as a case of censorship and that it has to be stopped because it is censorship. But in fact, this is something that the publisher and Roald Dahl's estate decided together. And essentially, a publisher can do that sort of thing if they want to, because what they're interested in is their bottom line. They're trying to sell more books, and they're trying to make sure that the nostalgia that people feel around children's books it results in sales for them. So in Britain, clearly these kinds of changes will help keep those books in print as far as the publisher is concerned, and therefore they're going to make those changes.
How do you feel about it personally?
Well, I mean, I think that classic books like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are fun and they're exciting for kids even today. But at the same time, there's an awful lot of more books being published that have those same kind of qualities without making kids feel bad about themselves. And there are books that have body positivity. There are books that don't have racial or religious stereotypes in them. And I think that maybe, we need to start thinking about the books that are being published now.
So, for instance, let's give an example here. There's in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Augustus Gloop is listed as enormously fat, and now he's just enormous. That doesn't change anything in terms of it doesn't change the spirit of the writing for you.
No, not really. I think that anybody who reads Roald Dahl in general knows that he is sarcastic and often uses hateful language about most people, actually. And so it doesn't really affect that sort of sense of, children as being problematic for their habits. Violet Beauregard is in the book is bad because she chews gum. And certainly there's a lot of people who chew gum who are not villainous and don't deserve to turn into blueberries.
Turn into blueberries, exactly. One French teacher, as reported by the French news agency AFP, posted a picture of Dahl books on Twitter with new titles. She replaced lamb to the slaughter with tofu to the slaughter and added the subtitle, and other stories that scare nobody.
Well, I don't think that that's what's happened here. I really don't. I think that the changes that are made are actually fairly slight. And to be honest, it is quite amazing that these kinds of changes were publicized, because publishers do this kind of thing all the time. As they're reading through books, they maybe change something to update it to language that kids understand, and they remove offensive language.
And you said, Karen, that this happened as well during Roald Dahl's lifetime.
Sure. The original Oompa Loompas were from a pygmy tribe in Africa. And if you look at the 1964 edition, you will see that language in there. But when it was reprinted, there were people who objected to that language, and rightfully so. And so he changed it so that the Oompa Loompas were from Loompa Land instead, which, is a fictional place as far as I know. And they no longer came from a particular group of people. And of course, in the 1974 film with Gene Wilder, the Oompa Loompas are orange. So they completely removed any kind of connection to humanity by doing that kind of thing.
Karen Sands O'Connor, what does it tell you when the UK publisher Puffin Books makes these alterations and the French publisher Gallimard does not?
I think that it's just a cultural difference between the British and the French. It's a difference of the moment as well, because right now British children's books are in a period of heightened cultural tension around them. So there's a lot of interest in the books reflecting the realities of lived children in Britain. Maybe that's not the case in France. I don't actually know what the culture in France is like around these kinds of issues. But in Britain, certainly we have been concerned about the way that children and books are reflecting each other. So I think it's a cultural moment.
Is what captures the imagination of a child timeless and universal, or is it specific to countries?
I think that some things are universal, perhaps. Kids like magic, kids like adventure, but there's no single child, there's no single culture. And, within any country, any community, you're going to have a difference of opinion. And some kids can't stand Roald Dahl and couldn't stand him whether he was revised or not. And, so it is a matter of taste. And we all know that, especially in terms of humor, taste differs from culture to culture.
It's an important question. We never thought that children's literature would become this battleground for culture wars like it's become, for instance, in the United States. You talked about tensions in Britain. What specifically, where is the tension lie?
So in Britain, we've, for the past few years, started looking at how things like children's book prizes do or do not reflect the community around them, particularly the Carnegie. We also have started looking at publishers themselves and whether they're publishing books that reflect the kids that are in school now. And these kinds of things bring children's literature to the center of attention. And when you do that, there are going to be people who are on either side, some saying, you have to leave everything alone and it's okay. I know one person who says, for example, Black kids don't need books that have Black characters because they can just identify with white characters or with animal characters or with you can use your imagination. And then there are other people who say we need lots more books that reflect the lived experiences of children today. So it's something that has gotten a lot of currency in this country.
One final question for you on this, Karen. What about in your classrooms? Have your students changed when it comes to this issue?
Yes, they have actually. I mean, it's interesting because I teach Black British children's literature. And when I first started teaching, there were students who weren't even aware that there was Black British children's literature or that Black people had been in this country prior to the migration that happened after World War II. But now I get students who, through various school kinds of activities, but also through things like Horrible Histories, which is a funny BBC history program, they know about people like Mary Seacole, for example. And so they have changed. They know about things that students 10 years ago even didn't know about. And so I think that's a change for the positive. The more stories that are out there, the more kids can enjoy and find what they enjoy in literature. And I think that's what's key.
Karen Sands O'Connor, so many thanks for speaking with us from Newcastle.
Not at all. It was a pleasure.